Hello, everyone. I'm Ronan Jane, and welcome to the Syndicate, a Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, and Tales of the Jedi has dropped, and it is a force to be reckoned with. And like always, I don't want to do this by myself and talking about Star Wars, so I brought in a friend who is a Star Wars fan and almost knew nothing about this show. And luckily for him, I got to see it early in advance. So thank you, my friend. But I have Sam from Team JVS here in the Syndicate show. Sam, thanks for coming on. You know what he means by that in a little bit, in a few weeks. This show, I felt embarrassed heckling you, be like, yo, we gotta watch that early. We gotta watch it early because it's gonna be boom. And like most times when we talk about stuff, you knew nothing about it except the poster that you retweeted. And I was just like, that is such a unique perspective. And for those who, just to let you know now that we're gonna talk about spoiler stuff, but I highly recommend you go watch our non-spoiler review that we filmed immediately after watching it on Sam's channel on Team JVS, and give it all the likes, subscription, and views as possible. But now we get to talk about the emotional effed up parts about it now without any rain. So spoilers. Sam, they killed Yaddle, man. They
Yeah, she got so it's weird, man. Like, first off, they introduced to a character. I was kind of like, who is this Yoda chick? And she seemed like she seemed wise as much as she seemed like willing to understand. It's kind of like Yoda,
yes.
he's never like the type where it's like, I'm a compromise to figure out where you are. Like, he's empathetic, but he's never gonna kind of compromise to understand. She was all the way on whatever Dooku was. She was like, I get it, I understand it. I'm not gonna fold here, but I disagree with what they did with this.
Mm-hmm.
And she did everything she possibly could to try to win him back. Down to he had already literally shut the door on her, not and
Literally,
she
yeah.
she lifted up just to show him a glimmer of light left.
Yeah.
Like that, it was kind of like it was symbolizing in the face of her death. And she knew this was coming. She wanted to show him with the last that she had that there's still light in him, that there's still something worth pushing towards. Even though he
Yeah.
still killed her,
Yeah.
it was tragic. It was beautiful all at the same time. Like, as an
That's
introduction to a character that I didn't know anything about, like I was like, fight was great. Um, you know, yeah. I think it was kind of like the essence of Star Wars, always based in tragedy and harmony and balance being shifted because of certain things.
oh yeah. And it's
So
I never saw Dooku as a tragic character, which I mean, I don't fault the people behind it. I mean, I think there's a lot of characters you can handle with, but that's the one thing I could say about what we'll be discussing is that, and I told this to you that Ahsoka and Dooku's arcs, and not just the series, but in the overall scheme of Star Wars, is very parallel. They both bring up
yep.
very questionary stuff that is valid and worth bringing up into question, and yet they go to two different ways. One decides to go the dark route, and one decides to go the um, untitled route, if you will.
The middle
And you could,
road.
yeah. And I just found that so again the way Dave kept saying that these are sort of tone poems. It was poetic that, and I mean you said it best that even from when we see episode 2 of Dooku seeing people in tragic situations being oppressed and seeing that at a certain point they might have been good, but nothing has been going upwards. It's been going downwards. And you see his shift into the darkness.
Yeah.
And then episode 2, it's highlighted more with another perspective from Jedi Knights with Mace Windu. And then once episode 3 occurs, which episode 4, which hey, I didn't know was going to take place during episode 1 movie. I was shocking to me. But the fact that at the height that okay, the Sith are back. Okay, we just lost a good knight, a good friend of us in Qui-Gon Jinn, and we didn't see this coming. And I keep saying and seeing a lot of people also compare it similarly that last 5 minutes, 7 minutes of that episode was the battle for Dooku's soul. And there was some point that we couldn't bring it up in the non-spoiler. Palpatine Sidious tells him, "Remember what you told me? Everything is corrupt. The Jedi's are following the corruptions." And it cuts to Yaddle, and she has no response. She has no response. She can't counter that the way she was counting it a few seconds ago. And I was like, that is genius. That she knows that he's right, but it's trying to be like, but this is not the way. And I was just like, oh, that was so
right. So
beautiful.
this is the thing that is very fascinating about the transition of any Jedi going to Sith is what is right. What I mean by that is if you look at episode 2, Dooku got a glimpse at how corrupt the Senate was. And it was kind of like he was jaded by that because he was like, okay, Jedi, they're a lie of authority, but they're not gods. They're not above anybody. They're not above reproach. So it's kind of like, yeah, I'm taking care of these people, but they need due process. Like, no, we can't just execute them. We're not executors for you or for your money.
Mhm.
And it was kind of like his glimmer of light was Qui-Gon Jinn, his Padawan, protected him. Then the next episode where he saw not only is the Senate corrupt and he's already jaded by that, but now the Jedi are folding to the Senate and possibly are being corrupted as well. And somebody that he deems as a very powerful Jedi that he doesn't necessarily vibe with, but tried to show him like, look, I get what you're saying is right, but there's a different way. Like in so many respects, Mace, I don't think he approached it right, but he was also a beacon of light as well. Like just on principle, this is a respected Jedi that is transitioning, just like he's trying to.
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, they transitioned him, but didn't Dooku because of his own indiscretions with how things are being ran. And then the last transition was he's already out the door, already doing certain stuff because he knows for a fact that the Jedi are compromised, which is true. He knows for a fact the Senate is compromised, which is true. The issue is the devil's in the details. Who is the source of this? And I think that's fundamentally why I love about the Jedi from the Sith is that a lot of times people can't understand what their real enemy is. He doesn't know the person he's working with is the true threat because they buttered him up and showed him all the inadequacies around him to say, oh, well, I know a better way. And that is how most people get transitioned to the fall, which is the Sith. And it's such a fascinating thing. Like I've never felt anything for Dooku outside of, he was once Qui-Gon Jinn's Padawan. But I was like, what does that mean? I'm like, the dude, he's kind of powerful, but who really cares? Especially think about episode 2. Who really cared about Count Dooku? I love the actor, but I didn't really care. But this cemented him as a character that has so much more weight going. Like again, this, and most of you guys should know now. I've only seen the movies. I've never seen anything outside of the original 2D animation Clone Wars. I haven't
Genndy
seen
Tartakovsky.
Right. I haven't seen Clone Wars CG animation. I haven't seen Rebels. I haven't seen Bad Batch. I haven't seen anything. So,
bro,
for me, I went into this completely cold, but I can piece together certain things. And I mean, we haven't talked about Ahsoka yet. And only reason why I know she's a great Jedi is because I had to research her while looking at The Mandalorian.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I told this to you before, but I'll say it even now with this series, this anthology, that I've always said that the Clone Wars, Dave Filoni, and from my opinion, Genndy Tartakovsky's, both those different Clone Wars series have elevated the prequels beyond belief. I grew up with them. I like them, but I know they are not perfect, and I know that you can throw dump trucks of plot holes and God knows what, but it's perspective. But I've always said that those shows elevated the prequels, and for me, these 3 episodes of Dooku are, first of all, they're my favorite Dooku anything ever in Star Wars, and they elevate the scenes with him in the prequels when he's talking to Obi-Wan, and he's telling him, I miss Qui-Gon. I wish I could use his help. Now I believe that as a genuine thing that he wishes Qui-Gon was here to do something to balance him out more. And the same thing when Palpatine tells Anakin, kill him now, and he has this look of disbelief, like, wait, what? Because he didn't see it coming. And the whole thing of not knowing thy true enemy. And I mean, from the details of him deleting the files of Saifu Diaz and Camino and Clone Wars, which that was another nod that I didn't see coming. The fact that that was a shocker to me, that he was already in cahoots with Sidious, and he pled to him like, you crossed the line, Qui-Gon, you let Maul kill them. And I first of all, before we go into Ahsoka, letting Qui-Gon be as pure in my belief as he is, and how much he and Ahsoka have so much connection. When Dooku shoved him and he was ready to choke out the senator, I don't know about you, but I felt like that's two ways you could see it. A, he wanted to get Qui-Gon out of the way to do his bidding of, eradicating corruption, but he also might have subconsciously thrown Qui-Gon out of the way to the barn to be like, I need you to do something. Get the sun or get something to snap me out of this, because if not, I'm going to do something I'm going to regret for the rest of my life. So there is that subtle thing where it's like, how do you look at that now? And I love that within 10, 15 minutes, that just blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, especially the second episode, I firmly believe that he knew Qui-Gon was going to make the right choice.
Yeah.
I think he threw him over there because he knew he was going to protect them. And at the same time, if he kind of stepped out of line, that he would have the willingness to at least tell him. He may not physically step into it, but he's going to tell him. But I think him pushing Qui-Gon over there was to protect them. I think at that time he was trying to protect them. It's like, all right, I'm about to get my hands dirty. But this is the thing. You could think of it 3 different ways. You could think about, like you said, doing his bidding. You could think about him, moving Qui-Gon to protect them. But it may have also been he didn't want Qui-Gon to get his hands dirty or start to falter like he is. Because most masters, they don't want their apprentices to fall down a worse path than them. They want them to be better. Even the Sith, for better for worse, they don't want them to, they want them to supersede them. And so I think that it was a combination of him wanting to protect the people, and at the same time, he didn't want Qui-Gon to get his hands dirty. Not in that way, because he knew that they were about to cross a line, and he was about to step up. He was ready for it.
To Mr. Liam Neeson, to your son, to Ian McDermott, to Bryce Dallas Howard, who for me has been one of the 1 or 2 stars of this anthology series. She does such a great job with Yaddle. I want to see more of Yaddle now with Bryce. To Corey Burton, who did the voice of Dooku, bravo. I mean, that was. I tell people, this show did so much in so little, and that's not easy to do in this day and age, and especially with how people look at and perceive animation. So, just want to give them a shout out, and to the directors who did Dooku's episodes. And now let's talk about Ahsoka. Ahsoka, I can never get enough with her. I love that there's still this mystical side to it that Filoni likes to tap into. Whether it be the first episode with her mom, played by Janina Gavankar in Life and Death, whether it be the training sequence with Practice Makes Perfect, or even the concluding episode of Resolve, where it's like she's hung up the saber, or at least I won't spoil that for you. But she said, "I'm done fighting. I want to just survive and move on in this galaxy." And the call to duty comes back to her, and I just appreciate that people are being more exposed to her. And I told this to you that if somebody was new to Star Wars and just watched the series for the first time, you can fall in love with Ahsoka and get the basics of who she is and what she stands for, and not miss out on much. But however, if you've seen Clone Wars, if you've seen Rebels, if you've seen The Mandalorian, if you read some of the comics, if you read her novel, which I highly recommend, from E.K. Johnston, like me, like Ant, who watched it with you and did the non-spoiler review, it was a hoot just experiencing not just the first episode, because that was just fresh and about her parentage, which I appreciate. But episode 5, yeah, episode 5, that episode had layers of stuff of just foreshadowing what's to come in terms of the timeline and just what people may think of her. Because I've heard people say that, oh, we're getting too much of Ahsoka, or she's too OP at this point. I'm just like, look where she's come from. Look how, again, the Jedi take these kids very young, and look who trained her. Look who pushed her to the limits past what the Jedi's beliefs were, which is, again, what it's fascinating that and perfect that Filoni chose to talk about Dooku and Ahsoka in the sequence. So, my question to you is that as someone who, again, you haven't seen a lot of the shows, which is fine, folks. It's fine. He'll have enough time to catch up to it, hopefully before the Ahsoka series on Disney Plus. But did you have a favorite among the 3 episodes? Did there was something that to you that spoke out more, that struck a nerve to you? What was it about those 3 episodes of Ahsoka that you're like, yeah, this is just as good?
So it's weird because the first episode started off so strangely. I was kind of like, is this where we're going? Is it going to be kind of like an anthology? I was like, who is this little baby? And I was like, oh, okay. I've seen models of what Ahsoka's supposed to look like in Clone Wars. So I was like, oh, that looks just like Ahsoka. Oh, wait, that's Ahsoka's mom. Okay. We got this little baby around, like, and she's already exhibiting, force abilities. And
Yeah,
so I was kind of like, she's already force sensitive, this strong. Is there, my thought went, is there a prophecy behind her? Like, I was intrigued more about her because I was like, this seems like a destiny kind of thing. It just made her more
interesting, dude. That's
more
I never see it that
surreal
way.
as a character. But I
Huh?
mean, definitely the second episode with her was the one that caught my eye. Like the way that they chronicled that, like from Anakin kind of reluctantly, going and training her, or what we thought was reluctantly, but no, he's pushing her, like the different stages of her being pushed down to the very last scene of that. And I don't even understand what went down, but I knew she had to
Oh,
do some things that she probably wasn't mentally or emotionally prepared for. But I'm saying that even in spite of her not being emotionally prepared for it, she was ready,
yeah,
because it shows that, yeah, Anakin was corrupted by the dark side, but there's a reason why he was so talented at what he could do. Like he understood pushing limits, and that was why he had none. Like he understood what it took to go the distance and back. And it's just crazy to see the apprentice of Anakin Skywalker. And you know what I'm saying? Like it's I guess that's the feeling that I get, is that okay, I'm getting a glimpse at who Anakin is through her.
yeah,
And it's kind of like it was tainted because of what happened with Luke, what happened with Padme, what happened with Leia. So it's kind of like there's a glimmer of light just because of Ahsoka's existence. And so I think the second was my favorite episode, honestly, with her. But that third episode, though, it reminded me so much of Obi-Wan. It reminded me so much of the Obi-Wan show, to be honest with you, because that was what Obi-Wan was kind of doing. Like he was like, I'm done with this. Like I'm out this game.
yeah,
But unlike Obi-Wan, when the time come for her to get Buck, she was like, I ain't forgot anything. I'm not denied who I am.
yeah,
And I love that, because it's like, oh, she's a Jedi Knight now. I
yeah.
don't I She's a master. And I didn't know that. I didn't know going from the second episode to what she was. Because again, I
Yeah.
haven't seen the series. So that next episode made me be like, oh, I need to see the Ahsoka show. I need to go back and figure out how we got here.
Mm-hmm.
But the second episode is definitely my favorite. But the only regret that I have with this show, honestly, is I wish that the actual actors would have reprised their roles as the voices. It's the only nitpick that I have with the show, honestly. The only.
What do you mean the actors?
The actors like Samuel Jackson, like Rosario Dawson,
Oh,
like
okay,
Hayden Christensen, like you know what I'm
okay.
saying? Like that would have been dope, especially for something like this. And I hope if they make a second season that they do bring those voice actors or those actors back as the voices.
I'm okay with it with this cast, and because I mean specifically Ahsoka, actually Eckstein co-created Ahsoka in my opinion with Dave Filoni and George Lucas. So I'm okay, and I'm glad that for me, I'm the opposite. I'm glad that they brought back D. Bradley Baker as Rex, and all the clones,
Oh, so
and they
these are
brought
the voice actors for the Clone Wars.
yeah, these are the original actors who continue on
Okay.
these
So
characters,
I
and
again, I don't.
that's fine. That's fine, and I think, but you brought up a good point. With I think that if in Ahsoka they bring up the Clone Wars, they bring up the prequels, that's when I would be okay with. Please bring Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor for a flashback during the Clone Wars. Put
Right.
Ewan in the Clone Wars armor outfit, because that would be a good transition, and also not to be like, okay, Clone Wars, you did a lot for us in terms of flushing out the prequels way better than we did in the movies. Now
Mm.
let's honor you in live action. So I hope that too. And uh,
Oh, so you think that Hayden Christensen and Ewan had already filmed scenes for a Ahsoka
dude,
series?
I'm gonna say this, and now people be like, "Don't put expectations. You're gonna make you put yourself up for disappointment." All I'm gonna say is this: logically, if the Force wills it, if you bring back Ewan McGregor, if you bring back Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen to film a miniseries, and at the same time, somewhere nearby or far away, they're filming the Ahsoka series, and you don't want to honor the prequels and tell something of a story in that perspective, to me, from my as a fan perspective, all I'm saying is that would be a huge missed opportunity. I don't want the whole Ahsoka series to be based on her just getting flashbacks each episode with Ewan and Hayden and Natalie Portman and all of them, and Tamara Morrison. I don't want that, but at least once in her series, it'd be nice to look at Ewan, Hayden, Natalie, Tamara Morrison through the lenses of the Clone Wars, not the prequels, because we've already been seeing that out the wazoo. But put them through the clothing, the armor. It would be such a poetic thing to be like, you know what? We're not looking down at animation. The animation series, the shows are just as valid as the movies, and they've helped us a tremendous amount flushing out the characters. Let's honor them as best as we can. And I think when people might have critique with little Ahsoka stopping the bear or that leopard thing, all I'll say is this to them: it feels very shocking. I'm like, whoa, can that kid do that? All I'll say is this: if little Anakin can go on a pod race and almost get himself killed and survive that and win it, I think it's possible for the little Ahsoka to do that. Now, yes, he is the prophecy and he's all that stuff, but Dave said, you know, her mom is teaching her not to be afraid, to face fear and death. And it's either that or her using the Force. What's the difference?
Yeah.
That's my perspective on that. And we're gonna wrap things up right now. And I know we could delve deep into spoilers, but all I'm gonna say is to avoid Sam getting spoiled on stuff for those shows, because I want to generally have him experience those shows generally and to the fullest extent. Jesse, that folks, I was crying. There's a little Caleb Doom in the background when Ahsoka's training in the first few minutes of episode 5. That brought me to tears. The funeral with Padme and Bail Organa saying, why you risk it? You couldn't do nothing for them. And just the music with Kevin kind of being like, she was my friend. I
Yeah.
told you, dude. You see my reaction. I almost choked up and like, oh my gosh, she's at the funeral, but she can't be seen. And oh my gosh, she risked it just because they were friends. And folks, I urge you, watch Tales of the Jedi over and over again so that they know we want more of this. Go and give a round of applause to Kevin Kiner. Salute all the animation people who worked on this. If you had an ounce of involvement in this show, thank you so much and well done. To Dave Filoni, I think he's the GOAT of Star Wars. He is the chosen one after George Lucas. And I'm thankful this exists. And even more than that, I'm thankful that Sam gave me the opportunity to see it early and that he has joined the Syndicate podcast. Sam, thank you much for joining us. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you guys, you can find me on Team JVS. We are everywhere from Facebook to TikTok to YouTube. That is where our primary location is. That's where we have our reviews, discussions, interviews. Some interviews that are coming up very soon. You guys are not going to miss. A lot of them are anime related very soon. And yeah, Wakanda Forever. But for me specifically, you can find me at Super SEL0320 on all social media platforms. Yeah.
And folks, please tune in. I will be doing more reactions on Andor, which is another highlight that I'll have to do another Syndicate episode for when that concludes. Also, look out for our Last of Us podcast, Bottles and Bricks. But more stuff can start coming out of the Last of Us TV show from HBO and some stuff of the games and their franchise. Sam and I will be talking about that more in depth as time will tell. And yeah, this show stuck a nerve with me. I can't stop rewatching it over and over again. But we gotta go. We gotta go. Thank you so much for tuning in. May the force with you, and this is the way.